Welcome back. I'm your host, Shabnam Islam. On today's show, we have Karuna Rawal, Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Revenue Officer of Nature's Fynd. She's basically a chief of chiefs. She's a founding board member of Chief, a private network designed for women in executive positions that empowers them to instill effective change through collaborative relationships, leadership tools, and of course, top-down efforts that truly work. Karuna, it's a pleasure to have you here today.
It's great to be here with you. Thank you so much.
Of course. Now, for those of you that don't know, I actually met Karuna at Vegan Women's Summit in New York this year as you were a fellow speaker. And that is just when I found my new idol, I think, in this plant-based space, because I was so enthralled to see so many, particularly women of color in leadership positions such as yourself, doing big things that it inspired me. And I would love for you to share a little bit about your path to being a C-suite executive, because I know that it probably wasn't a straight line. So for those of us that are inspired by you, and maybe for our younger viewers that want to follow your path, please share away.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it has definitely not been a straight path because I actually started my career in corporate America. It's kind of funny. I started out working for a company that was, 100,000 people, and then went to the agency side and worked with 80,000 people, and then landed at a startup. So it was definitely not a straight line. But I started my career actually in knowing I wanted to do marketing. I loved marketing as a space and industry, and was really fascinated by the whole idea of kind of what makes people tick, what drives people's behavior. So I studied marketing in business school, and my dream job then was to go to P&G, which was at that point a long time ago, the kind of the mecca for marketing. And so I went there and was fortunate enough to work in the food and beverage category. And that started my love for food and beverage. I've always, even growing up and, coming from Indian background, food is a very big part of my culture, as you know. And so cooking and food and all of it was always something that I just loved. And so being able to work in food and beverage brands, understand how to build those. So early on, I worked on Jif peanut butter, everybody's favorite peanut butter, Folgers coffee, big brands, iconic brands, and learned how to do brand management. From there, I had the opportunity to, I ended up relocating to Chicago and actually took a little bit of a sidestep and continued to work for P&G, but more on the retail and shopper marketing side. So that was, really a new experience, kind of expanded my skill set. And then from there, I actually went on to decide that I was going to take some time to have some flexibility for my family. I had 3 young children. So I took some time off to be a full-time mom. And then I actually bridged into consulting and started my own consulting company in marketing, branding, innovation, again, in food and beverage. So that was kind of the common theme, which landed me actually on the agency side. Eventually, I ended up, I ran my own consulting for almost 8 years, and then a lot of work in food and beverage, again, in innovation, health and wellness, sustainability. So those have been kind of the common themes, and that led to an interesting opportunity on the agency side, which is something that I had not ever considered. But understanding sort of the analytical side of marketing and business, I also wanted to understand the creative side. So I took a leap to spend some, what started out, it was going to be a couple of years, ended up being 9 years on the advertising agency side, working for Leo Burnett. Worked with a lot of big clients, including P&G, my former employer, as well as, had an opportunity to work on some amazing campaigns. But again, continued to have this desire to sort of, how can I do more good in the world with the skills and talents that I have? So when this opportunity came up out of the blue, it was kind of funny because it was a company no one had heard of. They weren't Nature's Fynd at that point. But it was a chance to come in and build something from scratch, which, my whole career has been about being a builder. So this was a great opportunity to do that. And it was in food and beverage, but, helping the world kind of eat more sustainably and more healthily. I'm a lifelong vegetarian, was vegan for quite a few years, and now trying to be vegan again. So it kind of fit with my own personal values. And that's kind of how I landed here 4 years ago, believe it or not.
Wow, that is one heck of a story.
It is.
Oh, wow. That is so impressive because I feel like you give the opportunity to reinvent yourself without having to make that compromise of your ethos. And I feel like that's so difficult, particularly for women
Yes.
and women who have children. And now you're in executive positions and you've really broken the glass labyrinth, as we like to say.
Mhm. No,
So,
you're right. It is challenging. It's hard to stay true to your, and this is the advice I always give when I talk to young women that I mentor. For a lot of us in my generation, we kind of started out doing let's do the corporate thing and then work our way. Like, it wasn't easy to find this job when I was, coming out of business school. It didn't exist. So
mhm.
I do think, getting some of that foundational training is great, but the sooner you can get to a role where the work you do is in line with your own personal values and who you are and what you believe in, it makes a world of difference. I mean, not that I don't, I loved all the clients I worked with at Leo Burnett and their amazing brands, but there wasn't a personal mission and connection there. Whereas now I feel like, at least in the last 4 years, every day I'm waking up to do something that I bring my whole self to work. I am, like, this is who I am. And this is what I believe in, and I do think we can make the world a better, kinder place. So that's the mission I'm on, and that's the mission our company's on. So when those things come together, you work hard no matter what, but if you can work hard to do something that you truly believe in, I think it makes a huge difference in your own energy, in what you project out to the world as well.
I love that. And you know what? You jumped ahead in some of my questions, but I want to, before we jump into Nature's Find, I really
Yeah.
kind of want to get to know you because you actually talk about how you have this love for marketing. You pursued it in college, you pursued it through, and your love for food, and you took that cultural, um, that cultural feel of how we are with food in our culture, particularly. I think in Southeast Asian, we are we show our compassion, our love, and our welcoming to others through food. So being able to incorporate that into a workforce is just amazing. So when you were a child, what did you imagine that you would always be?
Pretty far from what I'm doing, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah. So my dad, I grew up as the child of a diplomat. So we lived all over the world, and traveling and living in new cultures and being part of, new communities every few years, was something that was sort of normal for my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
So funnily enough, the first thing I remember of what I wanted to be initially was actually an airline stewardess, because I thought they had the most glamorous job. But see, it did involve food, serving food, and traveling. So I managed to do those, just not together in that same occupation. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's
to me, that
fantastic.
was just the most glamorous job in the world. Like, who wouldn't want to do that, right? So
Yeah.
uh,
And because I do remember a time when flying was glamorous and we
yes.
used to dress accordingly. And
That's
there was a
exactly right. And especially in our culture, right? Like going to the
yes.
airport, receiving
Oh,
people who are flying in from abroad, all of that it just seems yeah, it's pretty funny to think back. But that's my first memory of what I wanted to be when I grew up. But yeah, over the years, it has evolved.
and now you just travel for work. So
Yes, exactly. Although the way the airline industry is going, it's like I'm serving myself food anyway,
oh
right?
my
So there's
goodness.
no more glamour to travel anymore.
Oh, like I was saying, we had an homage to the way that traveling used to be. Now,
Yes.
I think when we look at your the length of this career that has been so robust, what is one key lesson that you learned early on that you've taken with you all the way to the top?
I think it's really around integrity and authenticity. So, I think as you think about leadership, it's incredibly important to be authentic, and be true to who you are, because, if you do that, then you encourage others who work for you and work around you to do the same. And the more you can help people live their authentic selves, I think, everyone is happier and the work is that much better. So, being someone who's authentic, who keeps their word, who has integrity, matters both in, leadership, when you're running a team, but also matters in business. Saying, you're going to commit to things and you're going to deliver what you commit to, and being true to that has been probably, the number one lesson. I think the second one I would just, if you can indulge me, is really around the consumer and, really understanding the human that's behind the consumer, and making sure that you're always tuned into that. I mean, my favorite part of marketing is interacting with our consumers, and with, when I go to these festivals or go to panels or whatever it might be, it's really engaging with people and really understanding what makes people behave the way they do, what makes them tick, what gets them excited, and carrying that with you no matter how far away from that you get. So that's been the one lesson I learned early on at P&G that I've carried throughout my career.
I love that. So what do you do when those two things may slightly collide? Like your ethos, your integrity with what the consumer possibly wants, right? Which is such a fascinating quandary that I see that we're in now, right? As vegans, and those thought-forward vegetarians that are making the shift because you're realizing, oh, well, your dairy consumption is probably equitably as harmful. And when we talk about social injustice, it's a totally different category of things. It's unlike when we were growing up. Like my parents had a goat they had a cow in Bangladesh, and it just simply wasn't the way that it was, the traditional animal act. So what do you do in your leadership when you come with this confrontation?
Yeah, it's not easy, right? And that's part of the conflict, I would say, in many of the roles I was in previously is, there's a consumer direction or a consumer mandate, company mandate to go in one direction. And, your personal ethos is a little bit different. So it is something I think we all encounter. So which is why, I feel like I've been trying to move towards brands and products and companies where I can feel proud and have those things come together. There are times they're going to conflict. And I think, it's kind of a situation where there's not a perfect answer. I've had to navigate those. And sometimes it's helping people see that there's a bigger purpose to what we're doing, and we should be going after that bigger purpose rather than kind of marketing to the lowest common denominator or the thing that's, making the most noise right now or is on trend. It's not easy to do. So I'm not gonna, say otherwise. But I think a lot of the times what I found is, as I look at even now, it's like this whole thing of like, should we make these products as needy as possible because that's what everybody wants? Or is it about, my push is always, let's make them as great tasting, delicious food. Ultimately, that's what matters, right? And it may help, the people who are not ready to make the leap. It might help them if we start with a bridge, which is why, even the products we're doing are probably a bridge, frankly, because, there's a certain level of, we need more people to make the change, because if just you and I are, and the 3 or 5% of us that are doing, what we can, it's not enough. It's not going to, help us make the change that we make. So there's some compromises sometimes, but I try to look at it as, what do you need to do short term to get to the long-term vision? And sometimes you might need to say, okay, I would love for us to not have to ever, imitate meat-like products. But the reality is, and I think that can happen. If you look at dairy, it's actually happening because, almond milk doesn't taste like dairy milk. Oat milk doesn't taste like, and consumers are more and more accepting a broader range because it's serving a need and a purpose in their lives. So to me, and back to that point about the consumer, if you can identify what's the need we're trying to fill. I mean, people really mostly want delicious comfort food. There are those people who you're never going to be able to get, right? Because they want that exact same replica. And, that's not going to be possible, at least right now. It may happen in the future, and those people will gravitate towards that. I look at this as, you have to, I'm a big believer in the consumer, give the consumer a choice and allow them to choose, and make the choice, encourage them as much as you can to make a great choice. And in food, it always comes back to the same thing. Sustainability is increasing in importance, but taste always trumps everything every time.
Very true.
I mean, I worked on healthier foods for a long time even when I was at P&G and on the agency side. People will try it once, but if they don't love the taste, it's hard to get them to come back, and you want people to repeat purchase. So how can you make it almost effortless to make the change? That's the goal. That's the path. That's the journey we're on. It's like, let's make it as easy as possible, because not everyone's going to be driven by the same ethos and values and purpose. So we have to make it easy for people to make the switch. And I think looking at, plant-based milks is a great example of how it can be done. It doesn't have to be exactly the same thing. It can be something that is delicious and is, either great in your coffee, good for your cereal, great to drink, whatever it might be, whatever need the consumer has. How do we make sure we provide the right products for that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? Hence enter I'm sorry. So hence enter Nature's Find for you, right? The leadership opportunity to actually connect with a mission-driven business that has truly entered the alt protein space without having to truly be the actual replica of what you're saying of this this meat process.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about Nature's Find.
Yeah. So Nature's Find is basically, we are a fungi protein company. So we're not animal-based or plant-based. And the company actually started as a research project for NASA. When NASA scientists and our chief science officer, who was a graduate student, was working on a project with NASA to understand kind of what kind of conditions would need to be true for life to thrive outside of Earth. And interestingly, that journey took them to a place on Earth, Yellowstone National Park, which actually, if you've been there, has some pretty remarkable ecosystem that almost will remind you of places that are not on Earth, like Mars. So in that journey, they discovered in the volcanic springs of Yellowstone a fungi that was thriving and had been thriving for a long time, but was doing incredibly well with minimal resources. And as they studied the fungi, it turned out to be 50% protein, 30% fiber, has vitamins and minerals, and like, as I said, was growing in really, really harsh environment. So with some more work and scientific inquiry led to creating a fermentation process that the company invented. It's proprietary, called liquid air surface fermentation, where we can grow this fungi. We never have to go back to Yellowstone. It was a tiny sample that was taken kind of like a sourdough starter. And from that, we can actually grow enough protein to feed the world, which is pretty incredible. So what happens is we take, a tiny amount of it, we grow it in trays. We have a tray-based fermentation system, stacking trays. Right now, our facility is 4 stories tall, so it's like vertical agriculture. And we're able to grow new protein for the world in a matter of days. It doesn't matter what the weather is. 365 days a year, doesn't matter, it's not a planting season. So if you think about a cow takes, years to duplicate, plants take at least a growing season, so 9 months. We're making new protein for the world in every 3 to 4 days. So
without the use of water,
99% less land, 99% less water, and emits only 6% of the greenhouse gas emissions. So highly sustainable, nutritious, good for you because it has protein, fiber, and all of the elements. And then it has a naturally filamentous texture. So when it grows, it's a filamentous fungi. So it literally grows in these overlapping fibers. And what that does is we don't have to process it as much to create texture, right? So when you think about plant-based proteins, what you're doing is you're extracting the protein from a pea or soybean in a powder form. Then you have to rehydrate and process to try to create that texture that people like. If you think about mushroom, all mushrooms are fungi, not all fungi are mushrooms. This is not a mushroom, but it's a distant cousin of the mushroom, right? But it has this filamentous texture. So when we're making meat-like products, we don't have to do a lot to create that texture. We literally can grow it. It grows in these sheets that look like sheets of lasagna, chop it up and turn it into whatever the meat-like product is. We can also take the same mat that we grow and put it in a blender with water and create a milk-like substance. And that's what we use to create our dairy products.
Wow.
So we're the first company that introduced both meatless and dairy-free at the same time. So we launched in 2021 with a meatless breakfast sausage and a dairy-free cream cheese. And those were the first products we launched. And the reason we did that is we were looking at breakfast as an occasion where protein is a big consideration, right? And then this was even pre-COVID. And interestingly, with COVID, breakfast is actually breakfast at home with more, people live, working from home and remote working and all that has become much more of a trend. So we wanted to go after a space that others hadn't really looked at. So we created both of these products and launched them first in Berkeley Bowl out in California. And then eventually now we're expanding into multiple other retailers, including Whole Foods.
Wow. Now, this microbe called Fusarium strain
Flavolapis.
Yes.
Which means Yellowstone in Latin, Flavolapis.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
It is actually giving soy a run for its money because it is considered a complete protein.
Yes, it is a complete protein. That's exactly right. And that's, as you know, very rare to find in non-animal sources. So it has all of the essential amino acids. So it makes it a great source of protein for those of us who are vegan, vegetarian, etc. So, and it's incredibly versatile. That's the other.
What I love about it is that you've truly found a microbe that could be a solution to our issues with food scarcity, food deserts, places where people are dying of hunger and starvation, which should be nowhere in the world, especially the United States. But we do have those discrepancies here. So, and it's naturally occurring.
Yes, that's exactly right. In fact, we have a grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to work on creating, what we do is fermentation. As I said, that's the way we grow the protein, to create a decentralized fermentation system that can actually be used, working with smallholder farmers in sub-Saharan Africa and in parts of Asia to think about how do we grow protein in these places that frankly are going to be dramatically affected by climate change. So there's a huge opportunity there, and we are working on that project. We got a significant grant from them on trying to think about, work on how do we create those solutions. We've also demonstrated working with NASA that we can actually grow this protein in space.
Oh
So
my God.
so last year we actually did a tiny bioreactor that was launched on SpaceX 25 onto the International Space Station, and to see if we could grow the protein under conditions of microgravity, out in space. And that experiment was successful. They sent it back, and when we looked at it, it actually grew, very well, very similar to what we saw on Earth. And you can imagine the implications there is, as you think about long space travel for astronauts, one of the big challenges is protein, right? Like, how do you, create their muscles are atrophying, they need protein, and there's only so many freeze-dried packets of food you want to eat. The cool thing here is we actually were able to show that you can grow this, and then with some simple recipes, they could actually make food that would provide some versatility and give them the nutrition that they need. So you cannot take a cow or a chicken.
Elon should be knocking on your door. Like Virgin Atlantic should be knocking on your door. Private companies entering the space race should be powered by Nature's Find.
Yeah, there's a lot of interest from NASA in the work that we're doing on looking at, providing food in environments outside of Earth, which is super interesting. But also back to your point around food scarcity, emergencies. If you think about if we can develop a decentralized fermentation system that can literally show up in an emergency. And again, you're talking about being able to grow a neutral, neutral tasting, neutral colored protein that you can then turn into any number of foods. And that's the cool thing. We've been able to make, we've made so many different foods. We haven't launched all of them, obviously, but there's a huge variety that can come from, because we can take that mat and it can be, as I said, in a solid form that leads to more meat-like products. We can do a liquid form that allows us to do dairy-like products. And we've done everything from ice cream to milks to cheeses, all kinds of stuff there. And then there's a powder form that you can use for baking and pastas and, on and on and on, like protein powders. And so there's a lot of opportunity to take this one, what I call our miracle ingredient, and, turn it into a whole host of foods. So lots of exciting work happening in that space.
I just love this for you so much. It's so exciting. And I wish that this was getting more coverage on the media front,
that's what we're working on.
I'm going to make it my due diligence to actually do more reporting on what you guys are doing here at Nature's Find, because when we're looking at the impact of climate, I think the biggest thing that we're seeing is mass migration. Due to climate impacts, lack of water. It's not just, we don't see just war refugees anymore, right? We're seeing climate refugees. And if we're giving people the opportunity to have their own resource that is so easily replicable, sustainable, and affordable, then this is what we need in today's world. And so what I really wanted to ask you now, because I'm just really loving Nature's Find, their mission-driven business model, and how they're really tackling it from a STEM view. With your work being in this alternative protein space, like, what is your perception on now, like, cell-based meat as being the solution to the climate and animal rights issue, when really this fungus that we have right now is the solution to the climate and the animal rights issue?
Yes. Obviously I'm not working on cell-based meat. So you know what I feel like this could be an incredible solution. Now, having said that, back to my point about the consumer, right? Not everyone is going to, and I've said this before, I think I got quoted once, not everyone's going to start eating fungi-based foods tomorrow, although we're working on that. But I think, we're going to need a range of solutions, right? Think about the size of the problem that we have to tackle. We're going to need all of us doing, putting everything we can into creative solutions, innovations. And I think there's going to be different consumer segments that migrate to different things, different solutions. We genuinely believe ours is a fantastic solution. And once we are able to scale and deliver the economies of scale, it's going to be an affordable, solution that can be leveraged across the globe and beyond our planet. So that's what we're excited about. But, I think there are people that, genuinely just want that exact same thing. And, cultivated or cell-based meat is one way to get there. I think there's a lot of work to do in terms of the economics. I think that's going to be a big challenge. So it's going to be a while. And, whereas I look at our solution as something that's much more near term and something that we can do pretty quickly. And we don't grow in giant bioreactors or anything. We're doing tray-based fermentation. We're in a warehouse 10 minutes from downtown Chicago. We're not it's like there's no chicken poop or any of that to worry about. And interestingly, we're located in the old Union stockyards, the home of, the original, if you've read The Jungle, it's where, meat production happened for a long time in the US. It was the center. And so we turned that into the home of new protein. And, you can do this in any city across the world or any location. It doesn't have to be a city, anywhere you need. So I think there's a ability to scale and efficiency with our process that I think is going to make it pretty attractive, at least in the short term. I think cultivated meat, obviously it's a longer term solution. And, I will have to see. There may be certain people for whom that is the only thing they will accept. So remains to be seen, but
I'm like, how do I invest? How do I get in on this? Because this is brilliant, and because it has such a social justice and social impact, I think that is what, like we say, it draws upon my ethos, and it is a beautiful thing to see that people are actually using science, technology, engineering, and medicine as a means to heal our planet and heal our people. And
you said it. I can't say it any better.
How do we get our hands on some Nature's Fynd?
There you go. Okay, so the exciting thing is that we are actually now available nationally in Whole Foods. So both our meatless breakfast patties, which are already there, just started rolling out nationally, and then our cream cheese, which is in the midst of rolling out right now, will be available there. Our cream cheese is also available at Sprouts. And then we're available in a number of retailers in the Midwest, smaller retailers, and then at Berkeley Bowl, as I mentioned. So those are our two categories. We have some more exciting launches coming very soon. So definitely keep an eye out for that. And there's, we just did I don't know if you caught it, but we just did a limited release salad dressing with using our Phi protein, which created a much healthier dressing. We were able to remove a lot of the fat. So one of the interesting things about Phi is because it has this fibrous texture and protein, it kind of forms this emulsion, which you often have to use a lot of oils to create in something like a dressing. So we did a limited release dressing with Chef Eric Repair, who is our culinary advisor from Le Bernardin. And we sold out in 6 hours. So one of the things that we're really excited about is, as we get into different categories, what we're really trying to do is help people to see that we literally can provide Phi protein for every occasion throughout your day, from breakfast all the way through dessert. And actually, dishes made with Phi are actually on the menu at Le Bernardin. I mean, that's how big a believer Chef Eric Repair is in our protein. And the reason we really sought him out as a partner is, one of the big questions we always get is, it's fungi, like, how's it going to taste? Well, you can't think of somebody who's going to have a bigger, higher bar for culinary excellence than someone like him. He's a 3 Michelin starred chef, world renowned. And we've got a dessert on the menu. He's done a risotto right now that's on the menu using Phi, replacing a lot of the cheeses and dairy in the dish. And He's done a number of different things. And then he co-created the salad dressings with us, and they're fabulous. They did sell out very quickly, much more quickly than we expected. But we have many more exciting products coming. But right now, we would love the support of your audience, and to continue to support brands like us, because we need that. We need to demonstrate that there's a market out there, and I believe there is. And these are great tasting products, so there's no compromise. You're just gonna, with every bite, you're gonna help yourself and help the planet, which is, I think, the mission that we're all on.
And there's even like a tasting event at Le Bernardin in September, isn't there?
Yeah, so you are up on the news. Yeah, so as part of Fastco's doing their they have an annual innovation festival in New York the week of September 18th. And as part of that, they do 3 special dinners. I think it's called Taste the Future of Food. So we are going to be one of the sponsors of one of the dinners. It's going to happen at Le Bernardin, and it's a 4-course menu featuring our 5 proteins. You're going to get to taste it in all kinds of delicious dishes. So you can go online and sign up for that dinner. It's going to be a fabulous event, and Chef Eric is going to be there to talk about how excited he is about Phi and how he's using it in his restaurant, and our little side project we just did with the dressings, and many more to come.
And so if you really want to try this in a Michelin star style, I would highly suggest to buy those tickets today, because they are going to sell out fast.
Yeah,
but also, Karuna, I got to try really Nature's Find at the Vegan Women's Summit. Sometimes you guys are speaking at conventions. You have, is there anything else that we can look out for this year?
So Chef Eric is actually going to be speaking at the Plant-Based World Expo. So he will be there. We're trying to figure out if we can do some samples, but he'll be talking about Nature's Find. So it's a great chance to catch him, and Florence Fabricant, who's the well-known food editor from the New York Times. She's on that panel as well. I think she may be moderating. And then we're going to be at Vegandale. We're going to be at, all of the festivals that are, coming up. We are, really trying very hard to have a presence, and we'll be doing sampling. And pretty soon you'll be able to try our new products. We'll be at South by Southwest. And if there's other events you guys think we should be at, please let us know, because we're looking to connect with our audience wherever we can. We find the most valuable investment for us from a marketing standpoint is actually sampling, getting people to try our product. And you've tried it, and others, it's like, that's what people convert once they try it, because they don't feel like they're compromising. So that's what we're on a mission to do, is deliver as many samples as we possibly can.
I love it. And Nature's Find is truly that. It is delicious food with purpose and passion. Karuna, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a great interview.
This was a fun conversation. Thank you so much for having me, Shabnam, and look forward to seeing you again soon. And I'm sure we'll be at some of the same places very soon. So.
Absolutely. And so again, you're very welcome. And that wraps up this episode of The Chief, Karuna Rawal. To learn more about Nature's Find, please go to www.naturesfind.com. That's FYND. So thanks again for tuning in to Be Kind Connects and your continued support of the veg economy. We'll see you next time.